Yo,
Whoa. Hi. How's
what's
it going?
oh, it's going pretty good. Are the Moscow puzzles guys already on waiting or
Nope.
nope? Okay, so that means we have free reign to do whatever we want right now.
And I'm
All
already
right.
recording, so I don't know I don't know what you had planned if you were going to say a bunch of bad words or anything. So,
I was not going to say a bunch of bad words.
oh,
I could say a bunch of bad words though. You want me
yeah,
to?
right.
Okay. All right. I was thinking about this.
Yes.
So my semi-normal or abnormal ritual of sometimes finding myself watching Looney Tunes at 3 a.m. Was happening again last night, or should I say this morning. And I started thinking about this. We as humans, now this is a very strange thought that I had. We as humans humanize animals, like we make basically like Bugs Bunny, like a human being, a bunny, like a human being, a rooster, a human being. So do you think animals ever animalize humans in their minds?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in like a dismissive way. I'm saying I've thought about how animals think a lot, and I don't know the answer.
Right.
Because they do things like play and they have fun. They do things that aren't just for survival. So I think on some level they must, I don't know, feel things. But at the same time, how they think, I don't think by our human standards we can even figure those things out. Like a lot of times they have like intelligence tests for animals and stuff, to see which are the smartest animals or whatever. And I think pig is the answer. But those are tests based on our intelligence. So like that doesn't make any sense. They could be smart and think and feel and even talk, in ways that we couldn't understand. So
yeah, sure.
I don't know. Maybe they think of us as animals. We are animals. Maybe they just think of us as like really jerky, boisterous animals.
Yeah, like I wonder, it's got to be terrifying to some extent to be an animal on this earth.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, think about it. Like you got all these things walking around that can pick you up, and they speak in a language to each other, and they all look completely different from one another. But then you have in nature, I'm pretty sure we probably touched on this before, but like humans are just totally out of order with like the natural order. It seems like when you actually like look at how there's different species of spiders, but each species looks exactly the same, like from one another, for the most part.
Yeah. I think about that a lot with humans. So, when you watch like a science fiction show and they show like the planet where the aliens come from. I don't know if you've seen things like that. Like maybe it's Alf the cartoon, or maybe it's there's an episode of Amazing Stories that shows like a whole race of aliens, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And they all look just slightly different, but they all look disgusting. I think that's probably how not only animals, but if aliens exist, I'm sure they see us that way. Like we get so hung up on what we look like. And I really feel like to an outside species, we would all just look the same and disgusting. Like some of us would be taller, some would be fatter, some would be, have different color hair. But for the most part, we all just look nasty, probably. Just like when we look at naked mole rats, they might all be completely different in their own ways, but all we see is like this gross little naked mole rat. You know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you got to wonder if like some of those animals actually have like personality or whatever.
Right.
Like each one is different. Like they communicate with each other. I remember when Steve Irwin died, Norm Macdonald did a bit on the Jon Stewart show. It had to have been the Daily Show at that time, where he was talking about like how people were calling him up and being like, "You're never going to believe who died. The crocodile hunter."
Yeah, right.
Did you ever see that?
No.
Anyway, he was talking about how like he was imagining that like the crocodiles were like talking to each other and they're like, "Oh man, we had our chance. Instead, he got killed by some fish."
Yeah.
You know? And then he's just like, and they're like talking to each other like, yeah, I heard Frank did it, you know, the stingray. Like,
yeah.
Anyway. But,
have you ever seen that footage of the octopus getting itself out of a jar?
No.
It will like change the way you look at things for real.
That is horrifying.
No, I mean, it's really, it's kind of beautiful in its own way, and it shows like an intelligence that most other animals don't seem to have. But
how big was this octopus?
Well, that's the funny thing. It almost like changes size. I mean, it does change size. Yeah, you should look into octopus.
Is this on? Well, I do know octopus are. I've always said if there's already alien life on Earth,
right,
it would probably be in the form of whatever you can find deep in the ocean that we haven't seen yet. Because there's got to be tons of. I mean, they just discovered like not that long ago a species of fish that is like basically like flashlights.
Yeah,
like they light up. It's like what can be more alien than that kind of stuff? And like
bioluminescence. Yeah, it's funny because we've probably been further into space than we have into our own ocean.
Right.
That's pretty disconcerting, kind of. I don't know. Like, and it's kind of beautiful though. Like, I don't know. You know me, I love mysteries, and the fact that it is still a mystery what we live on and next to is totally insane.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle, if you will.
It is. It's oh my gosh. It is like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Like a Moscow puzzle.
Whoa. Nice.
I did miss that one. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Anyway.
I suppose that now would be the best time to do the introduction then.
Yeah, go for it.
Greetings, citizens of Earth. Welcome to Accelerativ Thrust. I am Dan.
And I'm Erik.
And here we interview really cool bands from Iowa City, as well as, you know, on other episodes, we review underground experimental, not so experimental music. And once in a while, we'll talk about the meaning of life.
Yeah, mysteries.
And mysteries and stuff like that. And yeah, no, I was just going to say, life is pretty amazing when you actually think about it. There's so much undiscovered about it yeah. Maybe we're the aliens, you know?
Could be.
I mean, who knows? Yeah, it's hard telling. But yeah, so today we are going to be talking to Moscow Puzzles, who are a fantastic two-piece instrumental group who we've reviewed both of their releases, actually. And they just put out their new album, which is fantastic, called Cicadas Are Sensitive to Parallel Lines. But also, if you go to their Bandcamp or look them up on Spotify, an experimental arrangement of rabbits. And they also have a basic math demo. That's a cool name. I like that. Yeah. On their Bandcamp. But anyway, we're excited to talk to them. They're also affiliated with 5CM Recordings, who, of course, we talked to Haploid before. And yeah, looking forward to talking to Tobin and Tony from Moscow Puzzles.
So, and they're waiting, so I'm going to bring them in.
Let's bring them in.
Hey there.
Hey, what's going on? How's it going, guys?
Going good.
Yeah, it's doing
we
great.
were just talking about your band. Yeah, we really like your band.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I guess I'll just kind of start with it. Can you just talk a little bit about the history of Moscow Puzzles and what led to forming like an instrumental band? Any bands you might have been in before Moscow Puzzles?
Well, I think so. Tony and I have been playing together in different groups for like a really long time, I would say. You know, a lot of stuff that maybe didn't get off the ground so much, but a lot of stuff we tried to make work. We're both from like the area, and I think this time it just kind of clicked, I guess. Like before, we had always tried to get like other members, or we had other people come in, but I think there was one time we were just jamming, the two of us, and I had brought like a looper with me, and we were just messing around with that, and it just clicked, and for us, and it just felt like, oh, this is totally a thing that we can do. I think we decided to go instrumental just because neither of us is a great singer. So is really just where that comes from. So yeah.
I think I can give kind of a little bit of context. And yeah, Tobin and I have been playing music together for, I don't know, at least 10 years. One of the reasons why I think this worked was we had taken a break from playing for a couple of years. We got back together, and all of our previous sort of projects had been mired with personnel issues. We did a lot of recruiting on, Craigslist and through friends, and for one reason or another, those bands kind of fall apart. And when we had started playing again, we thought, well, we can spend, months, perhaps years, working on these small projects, and then have someone leave for, reasons, perfectly legitimate reasons. I don't mean to bash people, like, people move on. But we were always here, and we just thought, why don't we just do something, and that way we can just focus on the music for the first time in a minute.
Yeah.
I think there's also another piece in that we started this band shortly before COVID happened, and we played our first show in January of 2020, and then once we'd been practicing for a few months before that, and once COVID happened, even if we did want to try and add someone, we could. So it was, we either make this work or we just don't play anything for years. And some extra motivation there.
So was it a conscious decision to kind of just remain like a two-piece, or were you guys ever trying to, get a bass player, or did you just want to keep it that way?
I think it wasn't at the beginning, but at some point we kind of made that decision. Like, I think we had gotten far enough and we had like made enough stuff that we were into enough that we're just like, and I would say for me personally, like as the guitar player, like I've always had a hard time writing with stuff because I get easily distracted by like other ideas. And with just having the two piece and like having to rely on just trying to be able to do that with just the two piece is like, it like really puts like constraints on me in terms of what I can do. And so it's nice in that like, it's a lot easier for me to just work on stuff without getting distracted too, which I really like.
I completely agree with that. Constraints help us a lot. Instead of, we can't figure out how to make this sound, we need to add like a synth, or we need to add another guitarist. We have just us and these instruments in front of us. How can we make this interesting? I think it helped us both.
I have a question about how this all works, how the construction of what you guys do works, because I think a lot of times when you think of a two-piece, it doesn't sound exactly like you guys because it's so fleshed out and full. And I think a lot of that has to do with using loops as you guys play. So I guess my question is, do you start with an initial loop and then kind of base the drums on that loop and then play other things over that? Or how does that layering work? Do you have those parts written, or some of it written and then some of it's improv, or whatever? I mean, I guess just your process,
Yeah, I would say definitely like the loop is like definitely like the hook or something, like when we're writing the song, like, and like I know like an idea is like one we should run with, like when like I have a really solid loop that like kind of like sticks in my head or something, like even after I stop playing it or something like that. And then you can just go from there, And then, we usually add the drum parts next. And then I kind of mess around after Tony's kind of set his groove underneath with trying to find something to go on top. In terms of improv, I would say it's kind of a mixed bag. Like, I'd say about maybe like on the record we just put out, like maybe a third, maybe a little more is improv. So, you know, there's like a healthy amount of it, but like it's definitely like we have like built-in sections, like this is the improv section, this is like this is the written part, and we kind of transition from song to song that way.
Do you approach it the same live as you do in the studio? Like on the studio recordings, are we hearing you two guys just playing the songs, or is it approached differently?
Entirely. You're hearing us going through the. Matter of fact, we didn't even have the option when we went to record this. We thought we might be able to do this, sort of to punch in and change stuff. We were told, nope, you play the whole thing entirely through. And I mean, that's how Tobin and I have always recorded when we were recording in my basement. It's just one take. And I think we do that. We do that on purpose. We like live music. I was, I guess, I don't know, inspired to play music because I went and saw a lot of shows in, you know, high school. And I always wanted to sort of be in a band, to write music that could translate well to, you know, a live show. And, you know, studio acts are really cool, and overdubbing is great. And I think we actually do like one or two little studio tricks on this record, but we do try and keep everything as translatable to, you know, the live show as we can. We're both into that.
I think maybe I can speak for myself, and maybe for Tony, I think it's just like the live show for us has always been thought of as like the main event. So, you know, and like almost the record, not to downplay the record, but the record, but that's kind of how I've always felt about kind of music in general. So it's always kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't want to do anything on the record that I can't recreate live. Sure. Because, you know, so the live show has always been kind of the main event, which is also why we build in a lot of improv, because that stuff works really well live. So do it in the studio too. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested actually, because on both of the releases that Erik and I reviewed, there seems to be a lot of a level of precision to them. Like, I mean, seriously, like I think it's just really tight sounding. Do you guys struggle with getting that one take?
Yeah, I would say on the first one, we struggled more with that, but on the second one, we didn't. I think it's one of those things where like, honestly, I think it's especially hard for Tony because like, you know, I record the loop and it's like coming out of my amp, and, you know, he's on the other side of the room, and he's really, because he's the drummer, he really has to lock in with it. So it's one of those things that I think it was just like a thing of like, it was like a whole skill to learn to be able to play to it that like took us some time to like learn how to do. And then once we learned it though, we kind of stopped having to think about it. You know, it's just like anything else.
Right. We've gotten better at it, but I think it was a real struggle in the beginning. We tried a lot of different approaches on how to do that. I was really concerned about monitoring, being able to hear it on, you know, on a stage. And I think we tried 4 or 5 different sort of monitoring and recording configurations till we finally found something. And the trick is, as we learned, you ignore all that and you just record everything live, even when you're on the stage. And, you know, if it goes well, it goes well. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We tried pre-recorded loops for a long time, and then we could just never get those to lock in. It always sounded very kind of, you know, on a grid, and it made improvising over it hard.
Yeah, it just didn't have the same feel. Like if you had like a pre-recorded loop that you were like triggering or something. Yeah, it just had a very different feel to it. So, and we just decided, and it was easier to keep time to when you recorded it in the moment for some whatever reason. I don't understand why, but it does.
So this might be a little too specific of a question. So when you guys start out, usually is it Tobin lays down a loop and then Tony, you join, or do you guys jam on something for a little bit and then just keep that going? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would say everything is very sort of jam oriented when we're writing. There have been songs where Tobin has come with, you know, a loop or a riff or something, and there have been songs where I come with the initial idea and we write something out of that. I can think of examples where we've done both. There are songs where I start and then Tobin plays over the drums and what have you. We try and, I don't know if we do this consciously, but it just so happens that if we sort of do everything the same way, all the songs kind of sound the same. You know, Tobin records a loop and then we play over it and that loop goes the whole time. I think if I had one sort of complaint about our really early stuff is it followed that formula a lot. We changed that up, and I think it makes things sound more dynamic and more interesting.
Yeah, that was an aspect of the latest recording that's why I was curious about if it was like one take or overdubs or something, because you will have something going for a little while and then it'll just change. And that happening live and you guys just playing off of each other is pretty amazing. That's super cool. I don't know. I'm kind of a gear person. So do you kind of have those loops saved at that point and you can kind of go back to them? Or when you make those 180-degree turns, is it just a new thing happening right at that moment?
It's 100%. The looper I'm using currently you can't really save stuff on it. Cool. So when, there's songs where I hit the stop switch, I clear it out, record the next loop. Cool. And that's all going on as part of the song. People have told me, like, when they see me live, that they're like, you're constantly doing things with your feet. And it's kind of true. So, because I'm doing, it's all done live and there's nothing like pre-recorded or saved or anything like that.
Right. And you're probably also running like different effects loops and chains and things too in there, right? So when you go to a new part, do you change the sound and things like that?
A little. I actually don't have that. There's not that many of effects that I use. For the most part, it's mostly just like the looper, a little reverb, and then I have like distortion. That's basically what I use. Because I found if like I add a bunch of effects, then when the shifts happen, it's like way harder to manage. It's super noticeable and stuff. So like, there's a few effects tossed in here and there, but for the most part, I try to keep it pretty simple.
Cool. One of the aspects of cicadas are sensitive to parallel lines that Erik and I talked about, that in comparison to an experimental arrangement of rabbits, is sort of, it sounded like there was sort of a transition happening a little bit in terms of like sound and I guess texture, in that this record sounded a little more a little dirtier, I guess, or a little darker kind of in comparison. Was that kind of a something that you guys had in mind when you were recording this record?
I would say for the most part. I mean, maybe not grungier, darker, definitely. When I was thinking about like stuff I was really into or listening to a lot when we were like making like the first one, I was definitely going for more maybe kind of like a little bit more of like a laid back kind of feel, a little kind of maybe spacier kind of feel. And then we did that and I got a little tired of doing that kind of a feel and wanted to do something a little darker, maybe a little more dissonant, maybe a little more like, grungy or whatever. So then like we tried that for that record.
The guitar tones on this record sounded more like something like Fugazi-ish or something, like, whereas like on experimental arrangement of Rabbits, guitar tones sounded like, I guess, more cinematic, I guess, or like just sort of more I guess reverby, like indie rockish, I guess you could say. Like, again, I hate kind of throwing around all these terms. It's just more for like lack of a better way to describe them. And that's one of the cool things I really liked about this new record.
That was kind of the feel I think we were kind of going for, in a lot of ways. So that's good to hear. Yeah. I think that was a kind of conscious shift on our part. So
one of the things that I remember when we started writing these songs, I think the first song we wrote and finished was Channel 9. The second one was Radix. And Radix in my mind was always I referred to it as the shellac song, because I guess we were listening to a lot of shellac and sort of that post-punk, sort of the start stops that you sort of hear, and like particularly like Todd Trainor's drumming, and just they're a big influence on us. And I think we were trying to make things darker, but I think we were trying to make things punkier and sort of just as an experiment. And then I think the experiment paid off. I think we could. We listened to a lot of noise. I think we got to integrate a lot of that, a lot of the punkier side of our influences that maybe we weren't able to do as much on the first EP.
Yeah, I'd say think about that. Going back to the constraints thing, is it's like being able to loop is easier when you're playing kind of softly than when you're playing like super aggro. So I think that was one of those things where like we got better at things. And so like we were able to get more aggressive, which on the first one, we kind of hadn't figured out the whole dynamic yet. Or just also being with like a two-piece, like not having a vocalist and not having a bassist. With like super aggressive music, it's usually like super repetitive, and things like that. And like it works much better when you have like a full band. So being comfortable with kind of like playing aggro music without like that full band was also something we kind of had to like work ourselves up to do. So
one of the sort of consistent things we always kind of think about is how can we keep things from sounding thin because there's only two of us? Like, what can we do to fill up the space? And I think when we played more aggressive music early on, we couldn't do it. Like, it was just, everything sounded thin and tinny. And I know Tobin has made changes in like EQing and his effects chain. And I changed the way I tuned the drums. And, I guess we've learned a lot. And we hope things don't sound thin. That's, that's kind of our goal.
I just have to ask real quick, being a Shellac fan, you mentioned Shellac. What's your favorite Shellac album?
Tobin, you go first.
Maybe either Excellent Italian Greyhound or At Action Park.
Okay.
Between one of those two.
I thought Excellent Italian Greyhound was not going to be the right answer. I love the first half of that record so much. It's so good. It's not to say the back half is bad, but like the first half really stands out in my mind.
Yeah, Steady As She Goes is a banger.
Oh my God. Yeah,
for sure.
Incredible.
Yeah,
incredible
great stuff.
So that's a good way to lead into maybe some other influences too. What are, not just on the current stuff, but since the beginning, what are some things that really influenced, I don't know, you guys personally, but also in this project, if that's not too wide of a scope?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has changed a bit. Like, definitely when we were going for the first one, I was going through like a really heavy like Tortoise phase at the time, so that was like a big touch point for that. And a lot of like, I was also listening to like maybe like a lot more like electronic music, which kind of ties in with like the looping kind of thing. And then it kind of grew and it got more into like, on the second record, more of like that like shellac Fugazi kind of territory which is also stuff I think Tony and I have both always liked for like a long time. So it's kind of changed over time. Is there anybody else you want to toss in there, Tony? I'm kind of drawing a blank.
Oh no, I speaking from my personal experience, when I started playing music, I would say sort of 90s indie rock, post-punk. I listened to a lot of like new metal in middle school, late middle school, early high school, which is very interesting to say because that's now cool again. But at the time, it very much was not. The bands that sort of showed me that there was, better worlds are possible were like Sonic Youth, were Yola Tango, were Shellac, Slint, Silkworm. Like these were the bands that made me want to play music. And I would say that they've always been a sort of a consistent influence of mine, whatever we're doing. I kind of got to dig into that more on this more recent record than the earlier one, but I think they're always there for both me and Tobin. Another element is just a kind of a noise in general. We're both into. And what am I missing? I feel like I'm missing something key here.
Yeah.
I know what I'm missing. Obviously post rock. I also listen to a lot of that, and to sort of, I mean, to another extent, like prog music. I would never compare myself to some of the prog drummers of the 70s, but they're aspirational figures of mine, and I think that's where we kind of got the idea to we can just make things longer, and that's okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Do you still have an appreciation for new metal at all, Tony?
That's an interesting question. It's really interesting to see it just come back. There are bands that I definitely think are better than others and have sort of stood the test of time in a way. Not that I listen to them, and this is going to sound terrible because like I'm really not like, I don't really like criticizing anything because it was a product of its time, right?
Sure.
But
100%.
Yeah. I think probably like Slipknot, Iowa. I would say holds up. If I was more into death metal, I'd probably still listen to that. What else kind of holds up? My God, a lot of the stuff I listened to was really, really rappy. But yeah, I don't know. I guess if I give it credit, it helped me think about, you know, music can be harder, can be heavier, and then I think I probably don't start. I probably don't listen to like noise punk without listening to new metal first. You know.
Yes, I was going to say if anything is out there that new metal definitely offered, I think for the people who are interested in going further, delving further into like underground music, it definitely provided a fantastic gateway into a lot of things.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. I think it was certainly a gateway. I think prog was also kind of my gateway to like post rock too. So
sure, yeah. Just had to ask the new metal question.
No, please. I see. It's bad because I'm drawing a blank right now. Had you asked me that question like a couple days ago, I would have been able to give you a long list.
Yeah,
but you know, I wasn't prepared for the new metal question. I blew it
deep in a new metal rabbit hole.
The new metal rabbit hole.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you guys feel you've been received? I mean, you guys have, when you guys started out, you mentioned it was during COVID, right?
Right.
And so you probably didn't have playing shows really on the mind as much at that point because of what was going on, I would suspect. But you guys have definitely been playing more shows. How do you feel you've been received like around, I guess the Midwest scene? And then on top of that, I guess this would also be a good time to ask, what are some area bands that you would recommend checking out? I know you guys, you put out Cicadas are sensitive to parallel lines on 5cm recordings. And that's a label that, you know, both of us are really into right now. Like the Haploid is a great band. What are you guys' experience with the regional scene here?
Yeah, I mean, Haploid are fucking great. They're really great. We've gotten chances to play with them and see them live a bunch of times. If you haven't gotten a chance to see them live, you really should. They're really incredible.
Excellent.
It's awesome to find like another band that like in like the state to like that, like, you know, you can play shows with and stuff like that who are like that good and stuff, and they're awesome. Like generally, yeah, I think the reception has generally been pretty positive. I mean, I think we've had maybe one or two shows where it kind of like went over weird, but those were just shows where they were kind of like weird crowds to start with, you know, like, you know, the median age was like 58 or something, you know.
I mean,
like, yeah,
I think we're conscious that an instrumental duo has limited reach. A lot of people like lyrics and like, I feel like that to people.
If we're on a bill with like similar-ish bands, it usually the reception's pretty good. In terms of some other regional people that we'd like to shout out, there's this band that we got a chance to play with in Omaha who are really great called Pagan Athletes. I think they have one coming out soon here we got to play a show with them, and they're really incredible. Maybe a little bigger. Yeah, we played recently in Chicago, and both the bands we played with were really great there. One's called Lower Automation. They're like this really cool, like pretty like straight up like mathcore kind of stuff. And they're really great. And we also got to play with this band Stander, who are really awesome. They're it felt like a really nice fit to be on the bill with them because they're like an improvisational, like post-metal instrumental band, cool. Which felt like a really good fit for us. So kind of like us, but with maybe like more of like a sludgy doom vibe to them. Tony, is there anybody else popping up to you? Or
when I think about the local scene, and I am kind of hesitant to list people because I will miss someone because I wasn't prepared for this question. But obviously Haploid are all-timers. I don't think this band would have existed without Matthias and Kaylee picking up our first release. Matter of fact, I'm pretty confident that it wouldn't have, because I think during COVID we probably would have practiced for a while and said, I don't know who's going to listen to this, and then tried something else.
Yeah.
Getting a physical on 5cm was a sign that someone else cared about it. That wasn't us.
Yeah.
And I think at least it gave me the motivation to, let's expand on this idea. Let's see what we can do. Definitely them. When I think about, I mean, there are other Iowa City labels that are great. Pretty much everything on Pokey's records.
For sure.
I know we're into.
Yes.
Every time I see PSYOP, it is a better experience than the last. I love them. Wombat, Justin Comer's stuff.
Oh yeah.
Incredible. We played with them a couple times. It's really funny. When we first started this interview, I said we wouldn't have known any bassists to play with, even or sort of anyway. So we were just going to be a duo. Part of the reason we became a duo was we wouldn't even know who to call at this point. I feel like after playing shows for a few years, we know tons of people. And
Yeah.
just getting involved with the music scene, like it's so different. There's so much talent here, and it's just it's an honor to have met so many good musicians. But those are just the acts that come to mind. Should not be seen as an exclusive list by any means.
Right.
100%. A lot of stuff going on in the area, that's for sure.
So I bet Wombat and you guys is just about a perfect match to see live. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've played with Wombat. We played with one of Comer's other projects.
Okay.
One time.
He
But
has
yeah,
a few. So
Unblessed rest of us.
Unblessed rest of us.
That's
cool.
That's amazing. I love the
good
Unblessed
stuff.
Rest of Us.
Yeah, I mean, I would just go ahead and say, well, mentioning him reminds me too of just like there's so much, at least around here in Iowa City, of like that kind of more like free improv kind of stuff. Right now, there's his stuff, and there's a bunch of other people too. And like just going to those shows a lot around town, like I think definitely kind of like showed up on the record, just because it just felt kind of like one of those things where it's just like I don't think I was even conscious of it. It was just like, oh, this is like the thing I'm listening to live or like a lot right now, and also just kind of being more like there's a couple sections where I'm doing stuff that's more like not to like thrown in, but like kind of Derek Bailey-esque or whatever that I'm throwing in just because like, it's also kind of one of those things that it's like, oh, people are into this. I should try to throw this into this too and stuff. And so I think that's a cool part about being in Iowa City is there's a lot of that kind of stuff too. And I think that had a bit of an influence on the record too.
Are you guys influenced by soundtracks or scores at all? I just kind of feel like some of your music kind of reminds me of that, like almost like a guitar and drum approach to like soundtrack score movies and stuff like that.
I mean, there's like a few scores that like I'll listen to. I wouldn't say, anything. Maybe I don't know. I would almost say like I think about some people like like who I think have been like really influential just on like the way I write music and especially the way I use loopers. Like like One Off the Tricks Point Never, who he feels very explicitly indebted to scores, and so it might be like via that, like I'm inspired by people who were inspired by scores or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Tony, do you have any thought on that? Or
I'm trying to remember. I don't listen to a lot of soundtracks, not because I am against it, but just because I don't even think I'd know what to look for.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I'm like definitely like a big like Jealous fan. That might sound weird, but or like in terms of really great scores, one of my favorite is the score Neil Young did for Dead Man. Not sure if anyone knows that.
Yeah,
one.
Jim Jarmusch, isn't it?
Yeah, where it's all like Neil Young doing like proto drone metal type stuff.
Yeah,
that's right up my alley. So
yeah. Do you listen to Earth by chance then as well? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because I was wondering about that because it's not like musically I hear a ton of similarities, but the approach I hear some similarities. But the only reason I mention that is because that sort of twangy proto, like you said, like doom metal stuff, the approach seems to be somewhat similar how those are put together with what you guys do, even though the result might be pretty different.
I haven't listened to like Earth in a while, but it was like there was a phase in my life where that was like in constantly heavy rotation.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely probably seeped in, and I've seen them a couple of times, so it's definitely like seeped into me, and at like as a player at some level, that stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I would completely agree with that. And just to jump back to the score question, there's a Yellow Tango record that I'm now remembering was a film score. It's called The Sounds of Silence. It was from a French film. So I take it back. I have listened to one score that I've really enjoyed, and I have a physical copy of it around here somewhere. So
Yeah.
well, maybe that kind of, seeped in like Earth did to us.
Right. Yeah, what's that Yola Tenga album that has that ridiculous album title? I Am Not Afraid of You and I Will Beat Your Ass.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's
Classic.
just, it's like, wow, like a band like Yellow Tango is going to name their album that.
Yeah, it's great.
It's hilarious.
This kind of goes back to some other things, but you were talking about shellac a little bit. And I know the latest thing you worked on or recorded you did with Luke Tweedy. And in my experience, and this goes way back, but it seemed like he was really into the shellac and things that sort of had that feel to it. Did you guys have sort of a common vocabulary, sort of musical vocabulary with Luke, that you were able to kind of have a shorthand with him when you were doing the record?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say, like, I mean, it felt really lucky that like Luke is like, right in our backyard, that it's just like this guy who's doing like, who does a really great job. It's really affordable. And like, you go in there and you're like, you don't have to like kind of like, there's plenty of people who you could go in and just be like, yeah, you kind of have to like vaguely suggest, what kind of stuff you're into because they're not familiar with it. But like, you go in there and he knows exactly what you're talking about. Like when you're just like, oh yeah, we're really into like shellac and like Don Cab or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, no, he 100% knows exactly what to do when you say that. And that's awesome. And like, he even had like he even has like this special rare snare that like that Todd Trainer uses, and he just like pulled it out and like gave it to Tony.
Yeah, he hands it to me and goes, "Play this."
Yeah, I was
very impressed.
Yeah, he did like a really great job on it. It's just like one of those things where it's like, it was kind of going in when you'd be kind of worried trying to explain to like the guy, like, if it's, some people you would have to kind of explain what you're trying to go for, but he just knows. So that was great.
Right. But I also think Luke, not to speak for Luke, but sort of follows that ethos of like the type of experience you'd get at Electrical Audio, where it is, the band is very front and center. It's, I'm not going to do anything to your music that you guys don't want me to. I'm not going to try and fit anyone's vision but yours. And so we were very actively involved in the whole process. Everything from tracking to mixing, even as we had to track many times. You asked, I think it was Erik. You asked if we recorded in one take. Absolutely not. Many takes had to be made to make those work, because it was my first time in the studio anyway, and there's a lot of. It's not tension. It's just it's a new experience. I'm not used to being under so many microphones, and so. He was very patient with us too, which I mean, I remember now. I go back and think. I think we had like 3 of the songs we banged out in like 2 or 3 takes, and then there were like other songs that like we spent so much time on. Like one song in particular, we spent so much time on, but then there were like 2 or 3 that were just like a couple of takes and we got them. So
cool. Yeah. So since you guys sort of construct the songs as you go, was it like this is going to be a silly question, but is it like you would be going along and everything would be great for like the first 3 minutes of the take and then just blow it? And then
absolutely.
I
drop a stick, Tobin plays something wrong, and then we stop and we start over, and,
right.
do that over and over and over and over again.
I can see how that would be
Yep.
equally liberating and totally frustrating.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes
And I
you just
think-
have to stop and take a break.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something we
And
learned.
Yeah, and I think with the one song that it was the third song of the album, Salted Pine, that took us forever. That song is so tightly constructed, and that there's like so many little points in there that's like if you don't hit this note at this right point at this right in the exact right way, like the whole thing just falls apart. And it's also a very long song, so it was just a lot of just trying to go again and again and again.
Oh, that is the worst. You get to like the last 8 measures or something and then just wipe out.
Yep.
It sucks.
Right.
Yep, pretty much.
And you guys had recorded yourselves up to this point. So like when you guys were doing the recordings yourselves, did you also approach it the same way where it was live takes? And if so, did you have like set aside time for recording sort of like in the studio, or did it just happen when you had time? You know what I mean? Like how did they differ between recording yourself and being at the studio?
I mean, I think being at the studio was nice in a way because it was like we had like 2 days to track everything, as opposed to like when we were recording the first thing at Tony's, it was very much like we set up all the mics and everything, and we set up all the rig down in his basement, and then like I'd come over to his place during our normal practice time, like twice a week or whatever, and we would just run through a song like 5 times and trying to get like the right take or whatever. And I think that can be kind of not a good way to do it in a lot of ways, because you very much feel like there's always like, oh, you can always do better, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that like time crunch, you'd be like, well, no, we get X amount of takes and we're just going to choose the best one from those takes. And I think that's a lot better way to do it than just to be like week after week trying to go and just do a better version, do a better version, do a better version. So
right. What that made me think of, Luke is such a skilled engineer that when we do it, we can always think of like a different mic configuration. What if we put like the 58 on this other drum, or what if we try 2 mics, or what if we try something with a different polarity pattern? When you're recording with someone who knows what they're doing, clearly backwards and forwards, like Luke, he knows exactly what to do, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think we ever changed the mics on the drums once. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Tobin may have changed. You may have went through a few amps. But
no, I think I just used my main one.
Yeah.
I think he changed, or there was one that he tried for like the first minute of the very first take, and then Luke was like, no. And then that was so
and the record sounded better because of that.
Yeah. And it sounded better because of that. So
again, those constraints may have helped keep things in line a little bit and move forward a little bit better.
Definitely.
Absolutely. The sense of space on Cicadas, I mean, just the sound, we were not getting that in my basement by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't care how many mics we had or how much stuff we put on the walls.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of space. The problem was like, it's too much of it, it's
right.
It sounds like basement,
Right.
But I mean, I think we're kind of happy with the way that one came out in terms of just the sound, because I think
even the constraints, like what we had.
I think we were going for kind of a little more of like a lo-fi sound to it too. So
do you think that recording with at Flat Black, do you think that also, this is kind of reverting a little bit back to the comparisons and sounds of the 2 albums, do you think that that contributed to the punkier side of this as well, of this release?
Yeah, definitely. I think just, like I was saying about like, there's that kind of like unspoken, like, or like, I guess spoken, but like, when we kind of say this direction, like, he knows way better how to get that sound out of what we're doing in the room with mic placement and how he's mixing and EQing things than we would down in the basement. Mm-hmm. Because down in the basement, like, we're just going based off of like a lot of things of like, well, we only have X amount of mics and, we're in X space and I don't know how to do this. So like, we can't do this because I don't really feel comfortable setting up a stereo pair or whatever, or like,
right.
stuff like that. So like you're really constrained, and like with him, he knows what you're going for and he knows how to do it. And that's so he can just run with it. So
Yeah.
Cool.
I think you're also constrained. I don't know if I'm actually going. Okay, good. My green light's on. Sorry. I don't know if we're also constrained by the room. Like we had to do so much correction for all the reverb and,
Sure.
all the pavement in a basement. And this discussion made me think of a track we did, a soccer fan's worst nightmare on our EP. That's the loudest song. There's the most distortion. There's the most noise in it. And I remember having to spend so much time on that and trying to get the headroom down. And eventually I think we found that it was very much more difficult to record louder, noisier stuff in a basement than sort of the cleaner melodic stuff. Mm-hmm. So we knew we wanted to take this next record, Cicadas at the time, to a real studio. And so we weren't limited by that. We thought we're not going to record this here, so we can get as loud as we want. We can get as noisy as we want. And so I think that definitely influenced as well. Mm-hmm. Opened us up a little bit to more possibilities.
Sure. Did Luke show you the big gong that's sitting over to the side?
I wanted to play that gong so badly.
Man, he took the band that I recorded with last a couple weeks ago, our drummer Jeff, he took his drumsticks and was like, you can do so many things with this gong. And Luke just started making all these sounds that I'm like, I didn't know you could do that with a gong. Like you could literally make like an entire like drone record with just a gong and no one would know the difference. It's amazing.
We were this close to putting overdubs. I really wanted to play that gong. I really wanted to stick overdubs in the end of it. Particularly, I think like at the end of Colt.
Yeah,
but I think we just didn't have the time at the end.
Yeah, if we had more time, we would have really done a number on that gong.
I think it would have fit totally into your music, man. That would be so cool to hear.
No, I think that's a goal for next time.
Yeah,
cool. More esoteric percussion.
That's awesome.
Maybe.
Yeah,
if we can get it to work.
So, do you guys have some shows coming up or plans for other releases, or what do you have coming up?
So I think we might have we have some shows that were like nothing solid yet, but we're definitely talking about doing with people right now. We also, so right after the last record came out, maybe a couple of months, Tony moved out of town for a little bit. So we kind of had a little pause. He came back. We immediately really learned a bunch of the material because we did like a little tour type thing. And we just kind of got done with that recently. So I think we're very much at the point of just like now start writing.
Yeah, we're writing the next record.
So
right
just
now.
start working on that stuff. And I think that's where we're at. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think we'll probably end up playing some shows in May. Those are sort of they're in the works, and we don't want to stop playing shows while we're writing. But I think writing will be our next. Getting another record out will be our sort of top priority.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely can't wait to hear that new stuff from Moscow Puzzles.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're thrilled that people like it.
Yeah. It's still nuts to me that like literally anybody cares. So it's great. So it's great to hear anything. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I have to ask on just a off the cuff kind of thing, Tony, what kind of microphone are you using? Like it sounds amazing.
This is a 7B. Excuse me. This is an SM7B.
Okay.
I turned all the presence settings off, the little switches on the back.
Okay.
But in general, I actually found this on Craigslist for really cheap.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
So,
as you can see, I'm using a 58, so it's like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, that also sounds good. I mean, I think in general, if it's a Shure, it sounds good. But
That's
Yeah.
true.
I agree. Yep.
not to plug Shure, that sounds really bad. Lots of microphones sound good, but I'm not a production guy. Tobin did all the production on the EP.
Mm-hmm.
He's really the engineer.
And how do you feel about Shure microphones?
Yeah, ask Tobin. I've used like 3 microphones in my life: a 7B, excuse me, a 57 and a 58 and a 7B. So that's my microphone knowledge.
Well, do you guys have anything else you'd like to say? Any last words? Anything you guys want to plug? Yeah, last words. Famous last words.
Tobin, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just, thanks for having us on. Thanks to everybody who's listening to the stuff, Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. I would double that. I didn't mean to cut you off, Tobin.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't.
Tobin and I are not sitting in the same room in case it's not apparent.
Yeah.
But no, I'll just say that it meant a lot to us for Accelerativ Thrust to cover our first EP. I mean, that was the only media attention that record got, and sort of like when d.i.y and Kaylee liked our stuff. Hearing our album covered on Accelerativ Thrust and heard people give a thoughtful review of it, I think definitely made us think that maybe we should keep doing this. And so
it was a pleasure
That's
always
awesome.
a pleasure to listen to all of it. So we're excited to see you guys and hear what you come up with next. And
You're gonna
Very
make me
cool.
blush, Tony.
well, it's the truth. Eric and Dan, thank you so much for having us.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank
no,
you guys
absolutely.
for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for being Moscow Puzzles. I was just listening to Cicadas Are Sensitive to Parallel Lines yesterday, and it seriously is every listen, it keeps getting better and better to me. So hopefully I'm going to be popping out to see you guys live sometime when you guys play one of those shows.
Yep. Keep us in mind when you're setting them up, or let us know, I guess is what I mean. Yeah.
We absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Keep us informed. That's it.
Absolutely, 100%.
Cool.
Well,
Thank you so
so yeah.
Thank you guys for
Thanks
being on.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. All right.
Thanks again.